So I'm really excited to be here. I was at the career fair last year as well, and I know that you guys are a terrific bunch. I know that I'm coming in a little bit later in the afternoon, and so I need to do a lot to keep your attention and keep you guys happy. So what I'm here to do, and by the way, I have a background in technology and project management myself. So I spent about 20 years in a consulting and project management career. So I sort of left where you guys are, or a lot of you are focused on now, but definitely can understand where you're coming from and can relate. So very excited to be here. Thank you very much. So as Michelle mentioned, my name is Jill Fahlgren, and I'm here today to talk about powering up your career. And what I want to do is I have information that I want to share with you, and I also want to make this as interactive as possible. So please don't hesitate to raise your hand while I'm speaking and share information, share ideas, ask questions, whatever is going to help you get the most out of this presentation. And then I actually left a good part of the presentation towards the end for the coaches in. So essentially, I want to give you guys time to ask whatever questions you have about career management and career transition, because I didn't want to come here and just presume that I knew everything about what your guys' needs were. So I've created the presentation based on what I see as being very helpful for people based on a lot of the questions I get as a coach, and also want to get down to the nitty-gritty of what's going to be useful for you guys. So here are the three objectives we have for today. Definitely understanding what are the key difference makers in career management and transition. And you'll notice I'm mentioning both. So I'm curious, how many people here are really happy with where they are in their careers? A few, awesome, terrific. And how many people are in transition or actively looking for an opportunity if you're employed? Okay, quite a few of you. And I presume some of you are still employed while you're looking potentially, all secret here, so we're not trying to get you guys in trouble or anything. But what I'm going to be talking about today really is relevant for both. Whether you're happy in your career, whether you're satisfied in your career and contemplating doing something different, or if you're actively looking for something else. So I want to make sure you guys, so I want you to understand that I'm going to be coming at that, with what I'm sharing with you today, I'm going to be coming from that perspective of helping you see how it's relevant throughout the process of career management. So the other two things we're going to talk about are specific actions you can do to power up your career. And what do I mean by that? A lot of people find themselves stuck, or maybe not feeling totally happy with where they are, whether you're in transition or whether you're employed and enjoying it even. So what I want to do is help you think about what are some of the keys to helping you really be in control of your career and helping you think about what's going to help you advance and get to wherever it is you want to go, recognizing that's going to be something that's unique to you and your needs and interests. And then the last thing, like I mentioned, is the coach's in. So I want to get your specific questions about what's going to help you. So this was the agenda. So it's just the three pieces, kind of a repeat of what our objectives are. So in getting started talking about powering up your career, the first thing I have here is a formula or an approach to thinking about career management. And it's intentionally, all of the arrows are continuing because it is an ongoing process. It's not like you do one step and move to the next and then you never go back, right? It definitely is a very iterative process, and each of these phases really depends upon and impacts the other. So I'm starting at the top with choose, and I'm using that word intentionally. Because what happens with a lot of people when they're thinking about their careers or when they're thinking about transition is that they want to jump straight to act or straight to action, right? So if I'm not happy, then I want to think about, okay, I'm going to start applying to jobs to get that new job. If I think I want to get promoted, I'm going to think about, okay, when am I going to get promoted? Where's my company going to recognize that for me? What am I going to do, right? Or maybe I'm going to wait. And I'm not even going to jump into action. I'm just going to wait and see what happens. So I'm intentionally using the word choose because I want you to think about that as being a really critical part of taking control of your career. Is first of all deciding what it is that you want, getting clear on what's important to you, and then the next step is planning. And yes, a lot of people have their, here are my goals for my week or my month or whatever. But what also happens is a lot of people end up going straight from, okay, I want to switch like I did. I switched from consultant and project manager to executive coach. It was a pretty big transition, right? But it wasn't a matter of deciding and acting, right? I really had to think about what did I need to do in order to make that switch. And whether you're looking to make a switch or make a pivot, or whether you're looking to be happier in your career or do advance, do more with where you are, you really want to think about what is it that I can do to prepare myself to make that happen. The other thing I want you to think about is how you can learn from the past and create your future. So this is really important on both sides of this, the comma, if you will, in this phrase, right? So what do I mean by learning in the past, or learning from the past? Sometimes I see people get stuck, get focused on, gee, things haven't gone the way I wanted them to. Or I just had a really lousy situation in my last job. And so they get sort of focused on that and forget to start doing what they can do to move themselves forward. On the flip side, when people think about what's next, they jump into action, and they don't think about necessarily creating that future, right? A lot of times people end up looking at what's coming my way, what's obvious to me, or I'm waiting for somebody to promote me, I'm waiting for somebody to send me a job or connect me to the right person or give me a job interview. So I really want you to think about not just, how you can create that future, but how can you learn from what you've had, what your previous experiences are? How can you learn from the past to inform how you create that future and what that future looks like? So I'm going to go through a couple of keys to powering up your career. And the first is knowledge. So again, thinking about the prior slide, my first little bubble there was choose, right? A lot of what happens that can really make a difference for people who find their path to being really happy and satisfied and successful in their careers is that they recognize that they need information. They need to know what their strengths are. They need to know what's important to them. They need to know what the market is like, where are certain industries or roles heading, what's the career path, right? So when you understand all those things, then you have a much better chance of understanding how do you manage that, how do you navigate the path through that to end up getting to where you want to go. So one of the first things you want to think about asking yourself is, what do I want and need? And what do I need to get there? The next thing that I want to talk about is your value. So when you think about advancing in your career, you think about pivoting, deciding what it is that you want to do next. One of the things that can be really helpful is to understand what is it that you're bringing to the table. Not just I have this experience, not just I have this knowledge or these skills, but what does that mean? How does that translate to a company? A lot of times there's a difference in perspective or a difference in what companies are looking for and what we're thinking about or how we're thinking about our careers. So companies are often looking for, I want somebody who can help me hit the bottom line, who can help me grow the company, who can help me deliver my projects on time, who can help me create this new product that's going to help our company grow or increase our market share. And we in our careers are thinking about, I have all this experience, I know how to do budgets, and I know how to manage projects, and I know how to manage people, and all those things are wonderful. What can be really helpful in terms of you thinking about how do you help get your message out, how do you control where your career is going, is think about that translation. Think about how do I take who I am, what my experiences are, and present that in a way that really speaks to my target audience, which is my current employer or my future employer. A third thing is visibility. So when you think about who gets the opportunities, whether it's in advancement or projects within your current company, or whether it's new opportunities, interviews, jobs, etc., what do you think? One of the things that can make a really big difference is having visibility to the decision makers, right? If people don't know you're out there, if they don't know about you, if they're not aware of you, it's going to be much harder for them to know how to help you or to know that you're somebody that can help them. So one of the things that can really help from the perspective of powering up your career is thinking about who do I know? And who knows me, more importantly, right? So how can you think about getting that visibility with decision makers? How can you think about getting visibility with people who may be able to help you connect to decision makers, or to people who may be able to help give you advice or perspective on career advancement or how you can achieve the specific goals you're trying to achieve? And the last thing I want to talk about in terms of the 4 keys is connection. And I'm guessing that's not a big surprise to you, but one of the biggest things that people end up doing in their careers is they try to do it all on their own. And they think about, okay, I'm going to go out, I'm going to find my job, and I'm going to apply to jobs, and I'm going to create my resume and my LinkedIn profile and all this stuff. And it's all about them putting all this information and all this effort into it. And you don't necessarily have to do it alone. How do you guys think business gets done? It's relationships, right? People like to work with people they know, like, and trust. People like to do deals with people they know, like, and trust. So when you think about one of the best things you can do for your career is to connect with people. And that really serves as a great basis for all of these things as well. Because through connecting with other people, you can increase your visibility. Through connecting with other people, you can get information, you can get knowledge that can help you get a better sense of what's out there. It can help you get a better sense of even perspective on your own strengths, on your own value. Again, you don't have to do all those things on your own, right? Think about that surrounding, the people that surround you. Think about not even just people that do the same work you do or work at target companies that you want to work with, but think about having that orbit of people, that network that can help you. One other thing I want to talk about is not just the things that you're doing, but also how you're doing them. And so mindset is something that I see can play a really important role in terms of thinking about keeping your career moving forward, thinking about finding your next opportunity. Have you ever done something that you really didn't think was going to work? Anybody? Yeah, how'd it go? Good? You're shaking your head, not so good. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, like sometimes you reveal something which you're not supposed to reveal at the appropriate time and it backfires.
It can backfire, right? So if you imagine you're looking at 2 candidates for a job, and one of them there is really excited because this is a great opportunity and they really want to do this kind of work and they're interested in the company and they think they have a lot to offer. And then you talk to another one who's, yeah, well, they're probably thinking they're going to get rejected again, and this is the whatever interview they've had, and they're here and they're going to go through it, but probably not going to work. Who do you think they're going to be interested in hiring? Now, I'm presuming their skills and qualifications are aligned, obviously, but your mindset really can make a big difference. And so I encourage you to think about that when you're thinking about not just the activities and the things you're doing, but also think about what you're not doing. What are you not doing because you don't think it's going to work? Or because you are thinking, you're not the right person for it, or you're uncertain? If you're not doing those things, they're certainly not going to help you. You're certainly not going to get that positive outcome, right? One of the approaches I like to encourage people to think about, and again, this is relevant whether you're creating or you're managing your career upward or forward, or whether you're thinking about what you want to do next, is really thinking about taking a creative approach to the process. So what I see a lot with people is that they tend to kind of wait. Okay, I've applied to some jobs, I've got my LinkedIn profile all done, I'm talking to people, now I'm gonna wait and see what happens. And that's a very reactive approach. And it's yes, it can generate some results. It also really puts the control into other people, into their hands. So if you think about a more creative approach, you think about, what can I be doing to move myself forward? What can I be doing to move myself towards achieving my objectives? And that could be any number of things. When you're thinking about creative, you're thinking about possibility. You're thinking about what might work. You're thinking about what might be out there. You're thinking about how can I, I don't know how to get to there at this point, but how can I make that happen? Who might be able to help me? What might I be able to do? And that's really a mindset that I encourage you to think about because it can help you create your unlock. It can help you get better visibility to what's out there, better information, and who knows what you might create in the process. It feels less productive because people oftentimes want to know exactly what it is they're going to be doing, right? What is the benefit of this? What is this, if I'm going to do this, what is the desired outcome? And you absolutely want to be thinking about that. What I would think about is, are your expectations for the outcomes realistic? Or might you be able to take a more creative approach to thinking about what those expectations and what those outcomes might be? Did you have a question? So I forgot to mention that I have a handout for our session today, and it didn't get printed, so my apologies for that. On that handout, I have a link, or I've shared a link. It's not linkable if you haven't printed, but I've shared a link to an article called "Why Thinking Like a Lawyer is Bad for Your Career." So I really encourage you guys to read this. So I'm going to talk to Cindy and find out. My business cards are on the table, so if anybody wants to email me directly, I'm happy to send you the link. But I'll also talk to Cindy and see if we can find a way to get it posted on the PMI website or something like that. So again, the title of that article is "Why Thinking Like a Lawyer is Bad for Your Career." What do you guys think? Why would thinking like a lawyer be bad for your career? How do lawyers think?
Lawyer thinks that they will win this case.
Yes.
That is one approach they always go with.
Yep.
Even though.
And if they don't think they're going to win, do they take the case? Probably not, right? Unless they think they can make a lot of money. Right? What else? How do lawyers think? They're argumentative. Okay, what else?
Analytical.
They're very analytical, right? They're always looking to disprove things, right? They're always looking for the problem. They're very risk averse, right? They want to know, right? They don't want to do something. They don't want to talk to the witness. They don't have the witness on the stand unless they know what that witness is going to say. Why do you think thinking like a lawyer may be bad for your career?
Chances.
You may not be taking chances. What else?
About themselves, not how can they win the career.
Not looking for a win-win, right? They're looking for their solution.
They're negotiating for a win-lose.
They're negotiating for a win-lose. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, so basically it squashes your creativity, right? It prevents you from really looking for what might be possible because you're constantly looking for what is probably going to be wrong, what might not work. So if you're thinking like a lawyer, are you going to go and meet with that person if you don't know for sure how they're going to be able to help you? Or if you're not 100% sure whether that you're the best fit for that job, is that something you're going to pursue? Maybe, maybe not, right? One of the things that this article talks about is that it really, not thinking like a lawyer helps you open up yourself, gives yourself the space for possibilities, for making your hopes come true. And I'm not suggesting that you're sitting around waiting for hopes to happen. But what it does is it frees you, it helps you think and act in a different way, in a more possibility-focused way, in a more future-oriented way, in a way that helps you think about what might be rather than what isn't or what can't be. And so one of the things that I also like about this article is that it talks about, when you think about your career, it's not, so there's the lovely career progression, right? And the historical, like you climb up the ladder and everything's terrific and it's very linear. And the reality is, that's very uncommon these days. That's very uncommon for a whole host of reasons. Not the least to do with just our world is changing so much. And, employment, the typical duration of employment is much shorter than it used to be. And so on and so on. So one of the things the article talks about is let go of the idea that finding a new job or that, thinking about keeping your career progression going in the way you want it is necessarily going to be a straight line. So, when you think about I want to get a job. And so I want to talk to people who have jobs who can, tell me they'll give me an interview. That's great, but that's not always what happens. In fact, that happens very rarely. Much more frequently, I talk to you, and you connect me to her, and she connects me to somebody else who, through that process, I've built my network, I've gotten visibility, I've learned things. Okay, maybe not. Not every conversation is as productive as we want it to be. But through that process, I'm learning, I'm developing, I'm getting benefit, and I'm getting closer to finding out where the job is. I'm getting closer to getting that interview, and when I get that, when I learn about that job, when I connect with those people, guess what? I've got all these people in the process that can potentially help me. So I do encourage you, if you let me know, or I'll talk to Cindy and try to get you guys this link. It's very brief, it's a very short article, but again, thinking about your mindset. The question is, how might you be limiting yourself in this process? Recognizing you don't have control over everything, obviously, but what can you do to keep yourself moving forward and keep yourself focused on possibility? So I'm going to go through a few actions here. They're pretty much aligned with those fundamentals as well. So stepping into action, what can you do now? Know where you are, who you are today. Know what your interests are, your strengths, your needs and wants when it comes to a career. And also know what's out there. What are companies looking for? The question is, how well do you know what it is that you want, and how well that aligns with what companies want? What companies want? How do you position yourself, right? So knowing what all that stuff, knowing what's going on with you, and knowing what's going on out there is going to give you a much better chance of figuring out how those two meet. Secondly, set goals. So you guys are project planners, or at least a lot of you are, I think, project managers, I should say. So I don't have to tell you about goals. I'm sure you understand the idea and the benefit of that. One of the main things I would think about is thinking back to that lawyer article, right? What are your goals? Long-term goals absolutely help you keep motivated, help you keep driving towards what you're trying to achieve. And thinking about those shorter-term goals. Are you setting shorter-term goals in a way that are going to help you continue to move forward? Is it just how many coffee meetings you have and how many applications you're submitting and how many companies you're researching? All that stuff is really great. What I would be thinking about here is, what do I need to know, and how can I get it? And that's where you can start setting those goals surrounding that, so that you take off that weight of, my goal is to get a job, because that is a huge goal, and that is a huge burden. And when you can set your sights on something maybe a little shorter term, that is extremely beneficial. You guys know, right? When you're managing a project, you don't go from starting to, I'm going to deliver tomorrow, right? There are a whole lot of things that have to happen in the meantime, and that's what I want you guys to think about with respect to the search or the career management. Keep your head up and think about what it is that you can keep doing to keep yourself moving forward. So being intentional, like I said, coffee meetings, applications, companies, all that stuff is terrific. Stay focused on what's most important to you. I see a lot where people, I heard about this job, or somebody suggested this job to me, and so I feel like I need to apply because I'll feel bad if I let them down. Maybe not so much, right? What I would think about is keep your priorities focused on what's going to be most important, what's going to be most helpful for you. And if something's not the right opportunity, thank that person. It's really wonderful that you have people out there helping you, and give them a little bit of feedback. Hey, you know what? I really appreciate this. This one isn't exactly aligned with what I want to do, but I appreciate your thinking of me, and I'm looking for something a little bit whatever, right? So try to give them some guidance to continue to help you, to that encouragement. But I got to tell you, they're not going to be thrilled if you apply for a job or pursue a job that you're not really interested in anyway. It's really not probably the best ideal outcome for anybody. And the question here is, what am I doing, right? How valuable is it? And if I wasn't doing this, what might I be doing? So stay focused on your priorities and what you think is going to be helpful to move you forward. And the final thing, this is, so remember on one of the first slides, I mentioned to learn from your past to create your future. Reflect and adapt is something throughout the process, whether you're in your career management. One of the things I see with career management is people tend to kind of get heads down, focused on their jobs until they're not happy, until something happens, and then they look up and they're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So reflect as you're going through, whether you're in transition or in your job, reflect on how are things going. Pick your head up, take a look around and see, where's the ship headed? Is it headed in the direction that I want to be going? And then think about adapting, right? So there's nothing wrong in heading down a path and realizing it may not be the best path. Learn from that experience and adapt your behavior, adapt your plan, and keep moving forward. You guys are project managers, so I know you know this better than I do, because I gave up project management a while ago. Okay, so 5 things I want to go through. Think about your network. Think about your network as an asset. One of the things I see is people tend to think like, well, as long as I'm talking to people, as long as I'm having conversations, I'm networking. And networking isn't the end goal, right? The act of networking is not your objective. Your objective is what can you learn through networking, getting visibility, and thinking about how can you use that network effectively in your career and when necessary in your transition. So think about it as the opportunity to connect with people, to give, but also to get. And take a look at your network. Who are the great people that you want to keep and that you're great, you're excited to have part of your network, and what might be missing? Do you have everybody as a project manager and maybe you want to expand to other people with other experiences? That can be huge value. The next thing is planning. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of context here because I think you guys probably get this pretty well. But at any given time, I would be thinking about, what am I doing, where am I doing it, why am I doing it, how am I doing it, etc. So, be intentional about how you're spending your time, what you're doing, and don't forget about this. One of the first things they mention when you get that job, have you guys ever read The First 90 Days? Think about onboarding at a new job. One of the biggest things they mention, by the way, is relationships and connecting with people. And so think about that when you're managing your career. How am I actively keeping my network growing, and how am I sustaining it? What am I doing to learn, to explore, to experiment? And that's our next what to do here is think about experimenting, think about exploring. So a lot of people come to me and say, what should I do? Should I stay in my current job or should I leave? The answer really depends upon you, right? It really depends upon knowing what's important to you, knowing how well your current situation aligns with that. And guess what? Knowing what else is out there. What else do you want to do? What are companies looking for? How do you position yourself for that, right? So one of the biggest things I find that can be missing when people think about managing their career is the whole idea of experimenting and exploring. A lot of times people either don't, they just kind of continue on a path because they're on that path. They don't want to start over, right? But what also can happen is, people decide, okay, I want to do something different. I'm not sure what to do. Oh, this thing came along. I guess I'll try it. Or, gee, I've always wanted to do this. I guess I'll go do it. But what I would suggest is before you just jump in, not knowing whether, what the water's like, right? Think about doing some experimentation. Think about who can you connect to? What can you do? Can you, join organizations to get a better idea? Can you shadow somebody in their job for a day? Can you talk to people who are doing it? Can you volunteer? There's a bunch of different things that you might be able to do. But what I encourage you to do is think about doing that due diligence and getting a sense of what's out there before you decide to commit to. Remember that first slide, choose. Experimentation and exploration is a great way to help yourself choose what you want to be doing and do it with confidence. The last two, message. So think about what your message is when you're going out, what you're telling people about who you are, what you do, your value. This is pretty, I'm guessing you guys are pretty comfortable with things like positioning statements and stuff like that. This goes beyond that as well. Not just kind of the verbal things, but how are you, presenting yourself on LinkedIn? How are you presenting yourself on your resume? What are you talking about when you're connecting with people beyond that initial introductory conversation? And then the last thing is your brand. So this goes very much along with things like visibility, with your message, with understanding what your strengths are, what your interests are, what it is that you do, right? So who feels pretty good about their brand here, that they feel like they've built a brand, comfortable with knowing what your brand is? Something to think about it. And your brand is your authentic, your unique promise of value. So it's basically what makes you you and what is it that you bring out into the professional world. It absolutely is about authenticity. And the brand, I don't want you to get caught up in like, what does a brand mean? The main thing I would suggest for you when thinking about a brand is that consistency of how do you put yourself out on the market. And I don't mean necessarily the job market, but just in general in your professional career. How do you put yourself out there? What are you known for? And who knows you? Who knows about you? And that's what I would think about with respect to the brand. And that's relevant, again, for both career management as well as transition. So you guys have been fairly quiet. I haven't given you a whole lot of opportunity to chat yet. So this is your turn. So what I want to do is give you a chance to ask me questions, and you can feel free to ask about the presentation, or feel free to ask whatever's on your mind. I've put some cards on the tables in case anybody's shy, but if people will just raise their hand, I'd love to get a discussion going. Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Gil, you gave great tips, but can you tell me how to handle the failure? Failure in the sense, let's say you're called for interview, but you're not hired, and they don't give you the feedback why you are not hired. So how to improve?
Okay, so the question was, if you get the interview and you don't get the job, they don't give you any feedback, what do you do? So I don't consider that a failure at all, because yes, you didn't get the desired outcome that you wanted, but you put yourself out there, you got the interview, and you did all that stuff, right? So I certainly wouldn't consider that a failure. But it's a great question. What can you do? They're not giving you feedback. So a few things I suggest considering when you're in that type of situation is, first of all, reflecting, right? Did you notice anything in the interview? Were there things that you didn't feel you answered very well? Were there times when their response didn't seem like they were totally satisfied, or they were confused, or anything that was on the negative side, right? Was there anything that you felt that they kept pushing on? Something where they kept asking you a lot of questions and you felt like they weren't getting your message. Those are great places to start to reflect upon what you might have done differently. Another thing to think about is, how well aligned are you with that role? So was it really, how good of a fit was it? Because, if you're going for something that's not really a great fit, it can be a tougher challenge. It's not impossible. Another thing to think about is, are you, wait, my mind just went blank here. So it may not have anything to do with you also, right? So that's why I say it's not necessarily a failure, because you don't have necessarily known what happened, right? So I don't just presume every time you don't get the offer that it's not you, by any means. I would absolutely do the reflection. I would absolutely be thinking about, what happened, what can I learn from this experience? And I would also recognize that sometimes there's somebody that, I've had all kinds of things, right? So, there was somebody that they knew better, that somebody, the board member suggested or whatever. I've seen situations where, as they were going through the interview process, they realized there was something that they wanted that you weren't quite strong on, that another candidate was. I've seen them decide to go to an internal hire instead of external. There were a bunch of reasons why, and sometimes they just chose somebody else. So I wouldn't take it as a failure, but I would absolutely look at it as a moment of reflection, an opportunity for reflection, and thinking about, another thing you can do is get a buddy and do some interview practice and see if that person can identify anything that might be going on in the interview. So if you're getting to the same point repeatedly and not getting further, that's definitely something I suggest, is thinking about, is it something I'm conveying that I don't know I'm conveying in the interview? If you're getting that far, clearly you have something going well for you, right? You're getting that. You're getting your message across pretty well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what you were saying
Yeah.
about interviewing with a partner. It's also a good idea to, like, if you can, some kind of way of getting them to take yourself, answering interview questions, just to see, like, your facial expressions and things like that. That's a suggestion that was made to me. So I'm sharing that with everyone. It helps because you can make sure things you're not aware of,
Yeah.
like facial expressions or body language or something, and if you can have the opportunity maybe to, maybe take your phone or something, so you can see that reflection of the person you're saying was a good tool.
Wonderful. suggestion, thank you. Yeah, computer camera, phone, that's a wonderful suggestion. And by the way, so what are they looking for when you're interviewing? Very high level, 3 things, right? So skills and capability, can you do the job? Interest, how interested are you? Remember I mentioned the mindset earlier, right? Do you genuinely want the job? It costs companies money to hire somebody, so they want to think you're going to stick around, they want to think you're going to be productive, right? And then the third thing is fit. So do they want you on the team? Do they like you? So when you think about the interview, yes, absolutely conveying the skills and knowledge and information and value is really important. Don't forget those other things. And sometimes when you see yourself or when somebody reflects back to you, I'll tell you, one of the things that I see when I practice interviewing with people that is really hard to detect unless you sit there and meet with somebody, sometimes people are too over-prepared. So they've kind of memorized their answers to the point where I don't feel like they're connecting with me. And that can be a difference maker. Because I feel like, are they telling me what I want to hear? Are they really, and if you think to that fit, it's harder to connect with somebody if you feel like they're talking at you instead of talking to you. Thank you so much for that tip. Thank you. What else? Questions? Yes.
You talked about the closing. How do we go about retail? It's one thing what we think we do that. It's another thing that other people see us as good at. Right? So how do you go about knowing what that is?
Yeah, so that was a great question. How do you create your brand? It's one thing to know what you're good at, what you want to put out there, and it's another thing what the people's perspective are. And that's a really great starting point, is to get, talk to people, ask people if you can and feel comfortable, to get a sense of what are you known for? What is your brand currently, right? Because that can be great information. And if it's not what you want to be known for, then what do you do? Change it. Well, yeah, you change it, right? And so remember, the brand is your unique promise of value delivered consistently. And so you want to think about, how do I get that brand across? It's about what you're doing, what you're saying, whether it's personally or, LinkedIn and resume, or, you can think about writing articles or, social media ways to get your message out. You can think about how can I participate in organizations or in conferences or something like that. So think about ways to get your message out. But what you want to do first of all is figure out what is it that you want your brand to be, and how do you start putting that out there. You're not going to necessarily change people's minds or people's perception immediately, but certainly over time, the more consistently you do that, the more they're going to associate that with you. Which is why it's challenging when sometimes people, when they decide they want to transition or contemplating it, and they start looking at all kinds of different things because they feel like, I don't want to miss out on anything, and I can do a lot of stuff, right? It actually is counter to your brand, because then what you really want your brand to do is have people know you. What are you known for, right? So that when XYZ comes up, they know you're the XYZ person. You're the top-notch agile project manager or whatever, right? That's the idea behind the brand, is that they associate with you because it's what you're talking about, it's what you're doing, right? It's what you're putting out there. And so when you think about, building the brand or whatever, you absolutely do want to think about what do you want that to be, and you want it to be authentic. Because otherwise it's like a persona or something like that, and it's much harder to sustain and be authentic. Yes?
I wanted to add to that, especially with LinkedIn, if you are in transition, it's so important to post about stuff. And being here today is a great thing to post about. If you can get a picture of yourself with some of the PMI materials and say, I'm learning new things, and mention PMI, then people will see that and they'll comment on it, and they'll associate you with project management, with wanting to learn some key takeaway that you've gotten from today. That's a great thing to post about. I do a lot of volunteer work, and it never occurred to me to post about it until someone was like, well, you should really be posting about that on LinkedIn. So I have been, and a lot of people have commented on it. So think about how what you're doing in transition relates to your brand, and when you're going out and doing things like this, is that something that you can mention on LinkedIn?
Yeah, terrific, great tip, thank you. Yeah, and it's so you may or may not want it to be about the transition itself as much as, right,
Yes.
what you're doing to learn about or participate in, experiment and experience what it is that you want to be doing.
Yeah, don't post, oh gosh, I just found another.
taking that, a lot of the time, and then if you see it's going to be different.
Right, yeah, so the question was, I hear that job search can take 3 to 6 months to land with a new job. Do I agree with that, and if so, why? And do I see that changing? Multi-part question, right? So I'm always hesitant to talk about the length of a job search because it really does depend upon your situation. I mean, you could be looking for 3 years if you're looking for something that is not aligned with you at all and you're putting in no effort. You know what I mean? So it really does depend on you, right? What you're doing, how how effective it is, or how helpful it is for advancing the cause, right? 3 to 6 months, I think, is a very reasonable time frame. And it's because, why does it take so long? That feels like a long time. Have I seen people land sooner? Yes, absolutely. But a few key reasons why it can take some time. So remember I talked, again, I'm going back to that lawyer article. I don't, like, it's not that magical thing, but I think it's a nice article. But anyway, remember when I talked about how it's not necessarily a straight line, it's, right? It's back and forth, right? So that is part of the reason why it can take some time. Because really getting out there, really finding something that is a good fit and putting yourself out there can take some time. It takes time to connect with people, to get on their calendars, to have those conversations. Sometimes it's multi-levels to get to where you want to go. So for that, that's one reason, right? Another reason is that you have no control over what's going on at that company. And a lot of companies, you'd be surprised how long companies can take for this process for a whole bunch of reasons. Oftentimes because they're doing their jobs. Recruiting isn't their number one thing, right? So they're trying to do the recruiting in the same, same time as they're doing their jobs and whatever, right? They're also sometimes not that good at it. So, I mean, and by the way, I've heard some companies have 8 rounds. People are meeting 16 people or whatever. So there's on the company side, there are reasons why. And I definitely encourage you guys, if you are pursuing a new opportunity, to not put all your eggs in one basket. To, even if you think that offer's coming, keep going with those other things, because you don't know if and when the offer's coming for sure. You don't know if it's going to be an offer that you want, whatever. I would just keep going. So those are 2 main reasons. Do I see that changing? The market has been getting better, especially in Chicago. I've seen more people getting interviews, more people landing than I have in the past couple of years. Frankly, Chicago's been a little bit behind the rest of the country in that. It's really tough to say if I see that, because my understanding is that the job market tends to lag behind the economy. And so the economy, while it's been doing really good, has also been up and down. So it's kind of hard to say from that perspective where things might go. But my biggest suggestion for you, if you want to land within the 3 to 6 month time frame, is to think about that, what can you do to create that opportunity and really create that network and really think about not just talking to people, but doing the things that are going to help you move forward. Was there a question over here?
It was more of a comment about personal brand.
Yeah.
Some things that I've done is go to like a local library. Oftentimes they have workshops on branding. So you can call around and see if they have like school workshops or others who do like personal development. And they are free. And they'll help you in understanding the pieces and components of building a personal brand.
Nice.
I'm a big fan of the library.
Absolutely, free stuff all the way. If you guys if anybody wants to email me, I have a tip sheet for kind of the key things you can look at for thinking about uncovering your brand. So feel free to email me on that as well. I'm going to go to him first. Yes.
About recruiters, this question is about recruiters. Most of the time, when the recruiter calls the candidate, they are in a hurry to get that person's resume and sending right to represent RTR and all, and they always say that the hiring manager needs this and they will be called for interview within 2 days, 3 days. It never happens. So, what as a candidate we have